The winter storm hit the forward operating base like a hammer wrapped in ice. Snow cascaded from the gray-white sky in sheets so thick that visibility dropped to 20 meters on a good day. The wind screamed through the mountain passes, carrying with it a cold so brutal it felt like knives against exposed skin. Inside, the temporary structures scattered across the valley floor, heaters worked overtime while soldiers huddled in their thermal gear, counting the hours until rotation. At the edge of the ammunition depot, in a prefabricated metal shed that rattled with every gust, Alara Wynn worked in silence. She was small, 5'4" at most, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that seemed perpetually focused on something just beyond the present moment. Her hands moved with deliberate precision across the CheyTac M200 intervention rifle laid out before her on the workbench, adjusting tension screws, checking barrel alignment, cleaning the bolt assembly with a meticulousness that bordered on reverence. The door banged open, and 3 Navy SEALs stumbled in, shaking snow from their shoulders. "Hey, Wynn," one of them called out. His name was Marcus Brennan, a barrel-chested operator with a Tennessee drawl. "You got the saw ready?" Jenkins about wore the feed tray smooth. Alara didn't look up. Third shelf, left side, already cleaned and test-fired. Brennan exchanged glances with his teammates. "You test-fired it? When?" 0400. Before the wind picked up. "In this weather?" Another SEAL, younger with a Boston accent, laughed. "Lady, you're either crazy or you can't feel cold." Alara's hands never stopped moving across the CheyTac. "The weapon doesn't care about my comfort, it cares about function." The third SEAL, a quiet operator named Davis, who'd been in country longer than most, stepped closer to the workbench. He was older, pushing 40, with lines around his eyes that spoke of too many deployments. He watched Alara's hands for a long moment. "That's a sniper weapon system," Davis said softly. "Why are you working on it?" "We don't have any long-range ops scheduled." "Maintenance rotation," Alara replied, her voice flat. "Every weapon gets serviced, no exceptions." Brennan snorted. "You know how to zero that thing?" "Yes." "You ever actually fire one in the field?" Alara's hands paused for just a fraction of a second. "I do my job, you should do yours." The younger SEAL bristled at the dismissal, but Davis put a hand on his shoulder. "Let's go, we got briefing in 10. As the 3 men left, Davis lingered in the doorway, looking back at the small woman hunched over one of the most sophisticated rifles in the world. Something about the way she handled it, not with the careful respect of a technician, but with the intimate familiarity of someone who trusted it with her life, made him pause. Outside, as they trudged through the snow toward the operations tent, Brennan muttered, "Girls weird. Who the hell volunteers for armorer duty in a place like this?" Davis said nothing, but his mind was working. He'd been around enough shooters to recognize the signs, the way Wynn's fingers had moved across the action, checking headspace and timing without looking. The unconscious adjustment she'd made to the scope mount, her eye catching an imperfection invisible to everyone else. That wasn't training, that was instinct. Inside the shed, Alara finished her work and locked the CheyTac in its case. Through the small window, she could see the mountains rising in the distance, their peaks lost in the storm. Somewhere out there, people were fighting and dying in conditions that would kill an unprepared soldier in hours. She'd left that world behind 2 years ago. She'd sworn she'd never pick up a rifle again. But the mountains didn't care about oaths. And winter had a way of bringing the past back whether you were ready or not. Commander Garrison Hale stepped into the shed without knocking, snow dusting his shoulders. He was a big man, 6'3", with steel gray hair cut military short and eyes that missed nothing. 15 years as a SEAL, the last 3 as commander of this task force. "Wynn," he said by way of greeting. Alara straightened, coming to a modified position of attention. "Commander." Hale walked to the workbench, his gaze falling on the now secured weapon cases. "How's the inventory?" "All systems operational. 3 rifles need barrel replacements within the next 100 rounds. I've submitted the requisition." "Davis says you know your way around a CheyTac." "I know my way around every weapon in this armory, sir. That's my job." Hale studied her face. In 2 months, he'd never seen her smile, never heard her laugh, never watched her relax even slightly. Most soldiers had Tell's nervous habits, jokes to break tension, complaints about the cold or the food or the boredom. Alara Wynn had none of those things. She was a blank wall, perfectly professional and utterly unreadable. "Where'd you train?" he asked casually. "Multiple locations, all in my file." "I read your file. Says you were a logistics specialist. Then you cross-trained to armorer. Doesn't mention sniper school." "Because I didn't attend sniper school, sir." It wasn't a lie, technically. But the way she said it, too careful, too precise, made Hale's instincts prickle. He'd spent enough time with people hiding things to recognize the signs. "Fair enough," he said, letting it drop. "For now, keep up the good work." As he left, Ilara released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She turned back to the workbench, but her hands were shaking slightly. She clenched them into fists, willing the tremor to stop. Outside, the wind howled louder, and the temperature continued to drop. Night was coming, and with it, the kind of darkness that made men remember why they feared the cold. The next morning broke gray and bitter. The storm had intensified overnight, dumping another 8 inches of snow across the base. Visibility was down to 15 meters. And the temperature had dropped to -20 Celsius before factoring in wind chill. In the operations center, Hale watched the weather reports with growing concern. 2 patrols were still out, and extraction windows were narrowing, but routine operations continued. Weapons still needed maintenance, supplies still needed inventory, and soldiers still needed to train. Davis found Ilara in the ammunition bunker, conducting inventory with a handheld scanner. The space was cramped, lined floor to ceiling with crates and metal shelving, lit by harsh fluorescent tubes that cast everything in stark white light. "Question for you," Davis said, leaning against the doorframe. "The M110 we pulled from the last op, feed mechanism was jamming. You fixed it in 20 minutes. How?" Ilara didn't look up from her scanner. Gas block was fouled. Cleaned it, adjusted the regulator, replaced the buffer spring. In 20 minutes. It's not complicated. Jenkins spent 3 hours on it the day before and couldn't figure it out. Jenkins isn't thorough. Davis smiled, slightly. "You know what I think? I think you've done that repair in the field. Under fire. Probably. When you've got about 90 seconds before someone figures out where you are." Ilara's hand stopped moving. She looked at Davis directly for the first time. "What do you want, Sergeant?" "Just trying to figure you out. Most armorers, they're good with weapons, sure, but you're different. You don't just know how they work, you know how they fail. That's a different kind of education. I read manuals thoroughly." "Right." Davis pushed off the doorframe. "You ever hear about a sniper called White Frost?" Ilara's face remained perfectly neutral, but Davis saw the tiniest tightening around her eyes, gone in an instant. "No." "Supposedly operated in the mountains about 4 years back. During the Kandak offensive, stories say this shooter could hit targets at ranges nobody thought possible. Then, after one op, just vanished. Never confirmed who it was. Sounds like a ghost story." "Maybe." Davis turned to leave, then paused. "Funny thing, though, the last confirmed sighting was right before a major operation went sideways. Whole team got hit by indirect fire. Only one survivor, but the records are sealed. Makes you wonder." After he left, Ilara stood motionless for a full minute. Then she resumed scanning inventory, her movements mechanical, her mind 1,000 miles and 4 years away. That afternoon, during mandatory training exercises, Brennan organized an impromptu shooting competition. Rifles cracked across the range as SEALs tested their skills against paper targets at 400 meters, the maximum safe distance given the weather. Ilara stood off to the side, observing, making mental notes about which weapons would need adjustment based on how the operators handled them. "Hey, Win!" Brennan called out. "You want to take a shot? Show us what the armorer can do?" Several men chuckled. It was good-natured, mostly the kind of ribbing that happened on any base, but there was an edge to it. The subtle condescension that came from assuming she was just support staff, not a real shooter. "I'm working," Ilara said quietly. "Come on, just one shot. Or are you worried you'll embarrass yourself?" Davis shot Brennan a warning look, but the younger SEALs were already egging him on. The competition atmosphere had shifted into something else, a test, a challenge to prove the quiet armorer wasn't just hiding behind her toolbox. Ilara looked at the rifles laid out, then at the targets. 400 meters in gusting wind, with snow reducing visibility. Easy shots for trained operators. Shots that wouldn't reveal anything she didn't want revealed. Fine, she said. One shot. She picked up an M110, checked the chamber out of habit, and moved to the firing line. No theatrics, no adjustments. She simply settled into a standing position, not even prone, and raised the rifle. The wind gusted. Snow swirled across the range. Elara's breathing slowed, her body going utterly still in a way that made Davis's attention sharpen. She fired. 400 meters downrange, the target's center mass sprouted a neat hole, slightly left of dead center to compensate for wind drift. Lucky shot, someone muttered. Elara safed the rifle and handed it back to Brennan. Weapon pulls .3 mils left at this range. Adjust your scope. She walked away, leaving a group of surprised SEALs staring after her. Davis smiled to himself. Not because of the shot, plenty of soldiers could make that shot, but because of what came after. Elara hadn't celebrated, hadn't smirked, hadn't shown any satisfaction at proving them wrong. She diagnosed a weapon flaw from a single shot and moved on. That wasn't armor or knowledge. That was muscle memory built from thousands of rounds under stress. That evening, Davis found Hale in his office, a converted shipping container with a space heater and a metal desk covered in operational maps. "Commander, you got a minute? What's on your mind?" Elara Wynn. "Something doesn't add up." Hale leaned back in his chair. "I'm listening." Davis laid out what he'd observed: the speed of her repairs, the intimate knowledge of weapon systems, the way she'd handled that rifle like an extension of her body. "Sir, I've worked with a lot of shooters. The good ones, they have a way of moving, of thinking. Wynn has it. And that name I mentioned, White Frost? I served with a guy who swore he saw that shooter once, said it was a woman. Small build, dark hair. Never confirmed, but..." Hale was quiet for a long moment. "You think our armorer is a ghost sniper from a sealed operation? I think she's more than she's letting on. And given where we are and what's coming, that might matter." After Davis left, Hale sat alone in the dim light, listening to the wind rattle the container's walls. He pulled up Elara's personnel file on his computer, reading through it for the third time. The file was clean, almost too clean. No disciplinary issues, no complaints, no outstanding anything, just a steady record of competent, unremarkable service. But tucked at the bottom was a single notation. Previous assignment records require level 5 clearance. Hale had level 4 clearance. Whatever Elara had done before arriving here, someone very high up wanted it buried. He stared at that note for a long time, then closed the file. Outside, the storm continued to build, and somewhere in the darkness, the mountains kept their secrets. For now. The emergency call came at 0300 hours, screaming through the communications center with the kind of urgency that turned blood to ice water. "Viper 6, this is Reaper 2. We are under effective fire. Multiple casualties. Requesting immediate extract. Over." Hale was in the operations center within 90 seconds, still pulling on his jacket. The radio operator, a young lieutenant named Sarah Mitchell, had the call on speaker, her face pale in the glow of the monitors. "Reaper 2, what's your position?" Hale demanded. "Static then. Grid November 74582. We're pinned in a valley, east side. Enemy has high ground on 3 sides. We tried to move, lost 2 men. We're dug in, but they're advancing. Estimate 15 to 20 hostiles with crew-served weapons." Hale's jaw tightened. Reaper 2 was a 6-man SEAL reconnaissance team that had pushed into the mountains 48 hours ago, tracking a high-value target. They'd gone dark 12 hours back during the storm, and now Hale knew why. "How many effectives?" Hale asked. 4. "Jenkins is critical. Moretti took shrapnel. We need air support or we're dead." Mitchell shook her head before Hale could ask. "All birds are grounded, sir. Visibility is 0. Wind is gusting to 50 knots. Air Ops says no way they can fly." Hale stared at the map display showing Reaper 2's position. They were 8 clicks northeast, in a narrow valley surrounded by peaks. A natural kill box. "What about ground extraction?" "QRF is suiting up now," Mitchell replied. "But the terrain, sir, in this weather, it'll take them 4 hours minimum to reach that position, and they'll be exposed the whole way." The radio crackled again. "Viper 6, we've got movement. They're massing for a push. If they coordinate, we won't hold." Hale felt the familiar weight of command settle on his shoulders. 4 men about to die, and every conventional option was blocked by weather, terrain, or time. "Tell QRF to move anyway," he ordered. "Fast as they can. We'll figure out how to buy Reaper time." As Mitchell relayed orders, Davis appeared in the doorway. He'd obviously been listening. "Commander, we need to take out whoever's commanding that attack. Break their coordination." "No air, no indirect," Hale said grimly. "They've got high ground. We can't even see them from here." "Sir," Davis hesitated, "there might be one way, but you're not going to like it." Hale turned. "Talk." "We need a sniper, someone who can shoot long distance in conditions like this, someone who can find a position with line of sight to that valley and reach out far enough to hit targets on those ridgelines. Our best marksman can barely make 1,200 meters on a good day. In this storm, I'm not talking about our regular shooters, sir." Davis's voice dropped. "I'm talking about Alara Wynn." Hale's expression hardened. "The armorer?" "Davis, I don't care what rumors. Sir, check her file, the sealed portion. You've got the authority. Even if I could access it, we don't have time for." "Then ask her." Davis stepped closer. "Look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she's just really good with weapons. But if I'm right, and she is who I think she is, those 4 men in that valley might have a chance." Hale stared at the map. The red icon representing Reaper 2 pulsed like a heartbeat in the darkness. 4 lives, maybe more, if the QRF got caught in an ambush trying to reach them. "Get her," Hale said. "Now." Davis disappeared. Hale turned to Mitchell. "I need eyes on that valley. Pull up everything we have, drone footage before they got shot down, satellite imaging, anything." "Sir, the last drone feed was 16 hours ago, and just get it." 5 minutes later, Alara entered the operations center. She was fully dressed despite the hour, and Hale realized she probably never really slept. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the tense atmosphere, the radio chatter, the map displays. "Commander?" Hale gestured to the map. "We have a team pinned down, 8 clicks northeast. They're going to die unless someone can suppress the forces on those ridgelines. Air support is grounded. QRF won't get there in time." Alara looked at the map, her expression unreadable. "That's unfortunate. Davis seems to think you might be able to help." Her eyes flicked to Davis, then back to Hale. "I'm an armorer." "Are you?" Hale challenged. "Because everything I've seen says you're a lot more than that. And right now, I don't care about protocols or sealed files or whatever reason you're hiding here. I care about 4 men who are going to die in the next hour." The operations center had gone quiet. Every person there was watching this small woman face down their commander. Alara's voice was steady. "Even if I could help, the conditions are impossible. Wind, snow, darkness. No shooter could." "White Frost could," Davis said quietly. The name hung in the air like a gunshot. Alara's face remained perfectly controlled. But something shifted in her eyes, a crack in the armor, just for an instant. "That's a ghost story," she said. "Is it?" Hale moved closer. "Because I just used my override authorization. Took 3 tries, but I got through to your real file. Turns out you're not just an armorer, you're a legend who's been hiding in plain sight." He pulled up a document on the nearest monitor. The text was heavily redacted, but certain words were clear. Specialized reconnaissance, long-range elimination, extreme conditions certification. And at the bottom, a single line in red text. Call sign, White Frost. Confirmed longest kill, 3,912 meters. Alara stared at the screen. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "That person doesn't exist anymore." "Those men in the valley exist right now," Hale said. "And they need White Frost, whether she wants to exist or not." The radio crackled. "Viper 6, they're advancing. 2 minutes, maybe less. The transmission cut off in a burst of automatic gunfire." Alara closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she could see another valley, another team, another time when she'd been too late. She'd sworn never again. But she could also see 4 men dying in the snow, their blood melting through the white crust, their last thoughts of home and family and all the tomorrows they'd never see. She opened her eyes. "I need a CheyTac M200, Cold Zero ammunition, and a team to get me to Ridge Point, the western overlook." Her voice had changed, becoming clipped and precise. "I'll need a spotter, weather data, and someone who can relay target corrections to Reaper 2. Do we have SATCOM relay?" Hale felt something loosen in his chest. "We can get it. Ridge point is 3 clicks. Can you make the shot from there?" Elara looked at the map, her mind already calculating angles, wind drift, altitude effects. The distance is 4,100 meters, accounting for elevation difference. Temperature is -22. Wind is variable but averaging 42 knots from the northwest. The Coriolis effect at this latitude will push the round approximately 9 inches right at that range. She looked up at Hale. "Yes, Commander, I can make the shot, but we need to move now." Hale grabbed his radio. "All units, this is Viper 6. I need a fast reaction team to Ridge Point, immediate departure, full winter gear and climbing equipment. And someone find me the best spotter in this base." Davis stepped forward. "That would be me, sir." "You sure? I didn't drag her into this just to let her go alone." Elara was already moving toward the door. 5 minutes. "If anyone's coming, be ready in 5 minutes. After that, it's too late." She disappeared into the darkness, heading for the armory. Hale looked at Davis. "If you're wrong about her..." "I'm not wrong, sir. Trust me." The radio crackled one more time. "Viper 6, this is Reaper 2. They're inside 100 meters. This might be our last." "Reaper 2, hold on," Hale transmitted. "Cavalry's coming. Unconventional cavalry, but it's coming. Give us 20 minutes." A long pause. Then, "Roger that. 20 minutes. We'll do our best." Hale looked at the clock on the wall. The second hand swept forward, counting down the time 4 men had left to live. Outside, the storm raged on, indifferent to human suffering, but somewhere in that darkness, a legend was waking up. And Winter was about to learn that some shooters didn't need perfect conditions. They were the perfect conditions. While Elara prepared her equipment, Hale sat alone in his office, staring at the personnel file that had taken 3 command overrides to access. The document on his screen was unlike anything he'd seen in 20 years of military service. The header read, "Classified Eyes Only Operation White Frost." Below it, a service record that made his blood run cold. Name, Elara Margaret Wynne. Rank, Staff Sergeant. At time of operation. Unit, Joint Special Operations Command Task Force Mercury. Specialization, Long-Range Precision Engagement, Extreme Environment Operations. Years of service, 8, before voluntary separation. The file continued with a list of confirmed operations, most of which were still redacted, but a few details emerged through the black lines. 12 confirmed operations in mountain warfare environments, 43 confirmed eliminations, including 7 high-value targets. Average engagement distance, 1,847 meters. Longest confirmed kill, 3,912 meters. Operation Frozen Dagger, January 2022. Hale scrolled down to the psychological evaluation section. The psychiatrist's notes were clinical but revealing. Subject displays exceptional emotional control and stress management. However, shows signs of profound survivor's guilt related to Operation Frozen Dagger. Despite successful elimination of hostile leadership at record distance, Subject's team was destroyed by coordinated mortar fire during extraction. Subject was the sole survivor. The next paragraph made Hale's throat tighten. Subject holds herself responsible for team's death, believing she should have identified the mortar positions before taking the primary shot. Multiple attempts to return her to active service have been refused. Subject has requested permanent reassignment to non-combat roles. Recommend approval. Forcing her return to field operations may cause psychological break. The final entry was dated 2 years ago. Subject reassigned to logistics and armorer duties at her request. Security clearance maintained, but operational status changed to inactive, voluntary. Note: Subject is to be given standard duties only. Under no circumstances should she be pressured to resume sniper operations without explicit written consent from JSOC command. Hale sat back, the weight of what he'd just read pressing down on him. The woman he'd just sent into the mountains wasn't just a good shooter. She was potentially the best cold-weather sniper the military had ever produced. And she was carrying wounds that went far deeper than any physical injury. The door opened. Mitchell stepped in, holding a tablet. "Sir, I pulled the after-action reports from Operation Frozen Dagger. You need to see this." She handed him the tablet. The report was 4 years old, heavily redacted, but the mission summary was clear enough. Task Force Mercury deployed to eliminate enemy commander coordinating offensive operations. Primary sniper White Frost successfully eliminated target at 3,912 meters under adverse weather conditions. However, enemy forces had pre-positioned indirect fire assets in response to suspected coalition observation. During team extraction, coordinated mortar fire resulted in 5 KIA. Only survivor was primary sniper, who was extracted 72 hours later after evading enemy patrols. Attached to the report were photos. Hale shouldn't have looked, but he did. 5 flag-draped coffins, 5 families destroyed, and somewhere, a woman who'd made the shot of a lifetime but lost everything that mattered. God, Hale whispered. Sir, should we recall her? Mitchell asked quietly. If she's dealing with trauma from that operation, she volunteered, Hale said, though the words felt hollow. She knew what we were asking. Did she? Or did she feel like she had no choice because men were dying? It was a fair question. Hale thought about the look in Alara's eyes when he'd shown her the file, the way her voice had changed from defensive to mission-focused. Had she really chosen to help, or had he manipulated her guilt to get what he needed? The radio on his desk squawked. Viper 6, this is Davis. We're approaching Ridge Point. Wynn is setting up. She's Commander. She's not like anyone I've ever worked with. The way she reads terrain, the calculations she's doing in her head, it's like watching a machine. Davis, does she seem stable? A pause. Sir, I don't know what you saw in that file, but right now, she's the most focused person on this mountain. She's not just good at this. This is who she is. Maybe the only person she knows how to be. Hale made a decision. Davis, when this is over, you stay with her. Don't let her disappear into the armory again. She's going to crash hard when the adrenaline fades. Understood, sir. Hale looked at the clock. 18 minutes since Reaper 2's last transmission. By now, the enemy would be inside their perimeter. Hand-to-hand range, the kind of fighting where training and luck mattered more than equipment. He pulled up the map display, zooming in on Ridge Point. 3,000 meters away, a woman was lying in the snow, preparing to attempt something that should be impossible. And if she succeeded, she'd save 4 lives while reliving the nightmare that destroyed her. Hale had sent good people into bad situations before. It was the job, but this felt different. This felt like asking someone to open their own wounds just to keep others from bleeding. Mitchell, he said quietly, when this is done, I want a full psychiatric evaluation team here within 48 hours. And not the standard deployment screening. I want specialists who deal with combat trauma. If Wynn is going to keep serving, she needs real help, not just permission to hide. Yes, sir. Hale turned back to the file, reading the final line one more time. Recommendation, honor her service, let her go. But he hadn't let her go. He'd pulled her back into the nightmare because he needed a miracle, and she was the only one who could deliver it. I'm sorry, he whispered to the empty room, but thank you. Outside, the storm continued to rage, and on a frozen ridge 3,000 meters away, a ghost prepared to become real one more time. Ridge Point was a jagged spine of rock jutting from the mountainside like a broken tooth. The climb had taken 11 minutes of brutal scrambling through knee-deep snow, ice-covered boulders, and wind that tried to tear them off the mountain with every gust. Alara reached the summit first, moving with an efficiency that left the 3-man security team gasping behind her. Davis arrived 30 seconds later, his face red from exertion and cold despite his thermal gear. The position was exposed, a narrow ledge, about 15 meters long, with a sheer drop on one side and the mountain face on the other. But the sight lines were perfect. Through breaks in the snow, they could see the valley below, a dark gash in the white landscape where Reaper 2 was fighting for their lives. Alara dropped her pack and immediately began setting up. The CheyTac M200 came out first, its dark metal already crusted with ice. She worked with mechanical precision, extending the bipod, checking the scope, loading the specialized 408 CheyTac rounds designed for extreme long-range engagements. Davis set up beside her with a high-powered spotting scope and a handheld weather station. Wind is 48 knots, gusting to 55, he reported. Temperature -24 and dropping. Snow is reducing visibility to about 3,000 meters, maybe less. Elara didn't respond. She was removing her gloves despite the cold, flexing her fingers, letting her bare skin feel the temperature. To Davis, it looked like suicide-exposed skin would get frostbite in minutes. But she needed the sensitivity, needed to feel the trigger properly. She settled into a prone position behind the rifle, her body going utterly still. Through the scope, she could see the valley, a narrow cut, surrounded by 3 ridgelines forming a rough U shape. Reaper 2 was pinned at the closed end of the U, using a cluster of boulders for cover. On the ridgelines above, muzzle flashes marked where the enemy forces were positioned. "Range to primary targets?" she asked. Her voice had changed again, becoming emotionless, mechanical. Davis recognized it, the combat mindset, the mental state where human concerns faded and only the mission remained. He worked his rangefinder. Eastern Ridge, approximately 4,100 meters. Wind is going to push you hard right at that distance. I know. Elara's breathing had slowed dramatically. Davis counted. 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out. Her heartbeat would be dropping too, entering that strange zone where the body became a stable platform for the weapon. Viper 6, this is White Frost, she transmitted. In position, request target priority and authorization. Hale's voice came back instantly. White Frost, Reaper 2 reports enemy commander position on Eastern Ridge, approximately center mass of their line. He's coordinating the assault. Take him down first. Understood. Acquiring target now. Through the scope, Elara scanned the Eastern Ridge. Snow obscured details, but she'd done this in worse conditions. She was looking for patterns where people naturally positioned themselves for command and control, where the fighting positions were slightly better built, where someone might stand a little taller because they believed they were safe at this distance. There, a figure slightly back from the firing line, moving between positions, gesturing. No weapon visible, which meant command, not direct combat. Target acquired, she transmitted. Stand by for wind call. Davis monitored his instruments. Wind is variable. Current reading 46 knots from northwest, but it's gusting. You've got maybe a 10-second window when it drops to 40. Elara felt the wind against her face, the way it pulled at her hair, the subtle pressure changes that told her more than any instrument could. She'd learned to read weather like some people read books, picking up the narrative of how air masses moved across terrain. 52 knots, she murmured. Dropping. 48. 45. Her finger touched the trigger, taking up the slack. At this range, she'd need to aim almost 3 meters right and 1.2 meters high to compensate for wind and bullet drop. The round would take approximately 7.4 seconds to reach the target. In that time, wind could shift, the target could move, 1,000 variables could turn a perfect shot into a complete miss. 42 knots, Davis reported, steady. Elara's breathing stopped. Her heartbeat disappeared into some quiet place beyond consciousness. The world contracted to a tunnel. Her eye, the scope, the crosshairs, the target. The rifle spoke. The sound was enormous on the exposed ridge. The muzzle blast kicking up a cloud of snow. The CheyTac's massive round tore through the air at 2,900 feet per second. A spinning cylinder of copper and lead that fought against wind and gravity in distance. 7.4 seconds. In the valley below, Reaper 2's leader, Lieutenant James Cortez, saw something impossible. On the eastern ridge, the enemy commander, a man who'd been shouting orders just seconds before, suddenly jerked backward as if pulled by invisible wires. He crumpled and didn't rise. The enemy fire faltered, confusion rippling through their ranks. Target down, Davis confirmed through the spotting scope. Clean hit. They don't even know where it came from. But Elara was already working the bolt, chambering another round. Secondary targets, Western Ridge, crew-served weapon position. Range 4,200, wind still 42 knots. The second shot took 6 seconds. A machine gunner on the Western Ridge stopped firing permanently. The third shot eliminated a fighter who'd started taking command after the first leader fell. With each shot, the enemy coordination collapsed further. The organized assault became confused, scrambling. Some fighters tried to retreat, others hunkered down, unsure where death was coming from. Reaper 2, this is Viper 6, Hale transmitted. You have suppression. Move now while they're disorganized. Roger that. Cortez's voice was almost giddy with relief. Who the hell is shooting for us? Old friend, Hale replied. Move faster, ask questions later. Elara fired twice more, clearing the escape route. Then she stopped, lowering the rifle slightly. Davis glanced over. You good? Ammunition conservation. They're breaking. Reaper 2 can handle the rest. She was right. Through the spotting scope, Davis watched as the 4 SEALs, including 2 wounded, began a fighting withdrawal from their position. The enemy fighters, thoroughly demoralized by losing their leadership to an invisible attacker, scattered rather than pursue. They're clear, Davis reported. QRF is making contact now. They'll have them out in 15 minutes. Elara nodded once, then carefully safed the rifle and began breaking down her position. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but Davis noticed they were shaking now fine tremors from cold and adrenaline crash combined. Put your gloves on, he said, before you lose your fingers. She did, fumbling slightly with the thermal gloves. Now that the shooting was done, the cold hit her like a hammer. She'd been too focused to feel it before, but now her body reminded her that exposed skin at -24 was a very bad idea. 5 shots, Davis said quietly. 4,000 meters in a snowstorm at night. 5 hits. I've never seen anything like it. It's what I do. Elara's voice was flat, empty. Did what I did. What you are, Davis corrected gently. That doesn't just go away because you want it to. Elara looked out at the valley, where 4 men were alive because she'd pulled a trigger 5 times. She should feel something: satisfaction, relief, vindication. Instead, she felt hollow, as if those 5 shots had opened a door she'd spent 2 years trying to keep closed. We should move, she said, before we freeze to this rock. The descent was harder than the climb. Elara's legs trembled with exhaustion, and the adrenaline crash was hitting hard. Halfway down, she stumbled. Davis caught her arm, steadying her. Easy. You just did the impossible. Your body's allowed to be tired. I'm fine. You're not, but that's okay. When they reached the base, a crowd had gathered despite the late hour. News had spread. Reaper 2 was safe, saved by sniper fire from an impossible distance in impossible conditions. Elara walked through them like a ghost, avoiding eye contact, heading straight for the armory. But Hale intercepted her. When? A word. She stopped, shoulders slumping slightly. Commander, you saved 4 lives tonight. I want you to know that. I did my job. You did a lot more than that. Hale paused. I read your file, the real one. I know about Operation Frozen Dagger. I know what you lost. Elara's jaw tightened. Then you know why I don't do this anymore. I know why you thought you couldn't. But tonight proved you still can. More than that, you're still the best there is. Those men died because I was the best, Elara said, her voice cracking slightly. I made the shot. I eliminated the target. And while I was focused on being the best sniper in the world, I missed the mortars setting up. 5 people died because I was so focused on being perfect at one thing that I failed at everything else that mattered. That wasn't your fault. It was my responsibility, my team, my mission. She looked up at him, and for the first time, Hale saw the depth of pain in her eyes. So yes, I can shoot. I can make impossible shots in impossible conditions. But every time I do, I see their faces. And I don't know if saving 4 lives tonight balances against the 5 I killed 4 years ago. Hale had no answer to that. Some wounds didn't heal, some guilt didn't fade. You just learn to carry it. Go get some rest, he said finally. We'll talk more tomorrow. Elara nodded and walked away, disappearing into the darkness between buildings. Davis appeared at Hale's shoulder. She's not okay, sir. I know, but she's alive, and so are 4 other men because of her. Is that enough? Hale watched the space where Elara had vanished. I don't know, Davis. I honestly don't know. The storm continued through the night. And in the armory, Elara sat alone in the dark, the CheyTac M200 disassembled on the bench before her, while snow fell endlessly outside the window. She'd sworn she'd never shoot again. She'd broken that oath tonight. And now the question wasn't whether she could do it again, but whether she should. The mountains had no answer. They never did. They just kept their secrets and waited for spring. Dawn broke gray and cold over the base. The storm had finally passed during the night, leaving behind a world transformed into crystal and ice. Everything sparkled under the weak sun, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. In the medical tent, the 4 members of Reaper 2 were being treated for injuries, hypothermia, and exhaustion. But they were alive, and that was what mattered. Hale found Alara in the armory, exactly where Davis had said she'd be. She was cleaning the CheyTac M200 with the same meticulous care she'd shown before, but something was different. Her movements were slower, heavier, as if the rifle weighed more than it had yesterday. "Alara," Hale said quietly. It was the first time he'd used her first name. "I wanted to tell you that Reaper 2 is going to be fine. Cortez asked to meet you, to thank you personally." "That's not necessary." "Maybe not, but he wants to. They all do." Hale moved closer. "You gave them their lives back. That matters." Alara set down the cleaning rod, her hands resting on the workbench. "I've been thinking about what you said, about how I proved I can still do this." "You did. But can isn't the same as should." She looked up at him. "I'm good at killing people from very far away. That's my talent. But talent isn't purpose, Commander. And I don't know if I can keep doing this, keep being White Frost, without losing what's left of who I actually am." Hale pulled up a stool and sat down, his large frame making the small seat look inadequate. "Can I tell you something? About command?" Alara nodded. "Every person I send into danger, I send a piece of myself with them. And when they don't come back, that piece stays gone. After 15 years, I sometimes wonder how much of me is left." He paused. "But here's what I've learned. That's not weakness. That's the cost of caring. And the day I stop caring is the day I need to step down, because I'll have become exactly the kind of commander who gets people killed for no reason." "What does that have to do with me?" "You're carrying 5 people with you. 5 pieces of yourself that you think you lost. But Alara, they're not lost. They're part of who you are now. The question isn't whether you can stop carrying them. You can't. The question is whether you let them be a weight that pulls you down, or a reason to make sure what happened to them doesn't happen to others." Alara was quiet for a long time. Outside, she could hear voices, the normal sounds of a base waking up, people going about their duties, life continuing despite everything. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that if I let myself be White Frost again, I'll lose myself completely. That I'll become just the rifle, just the shot, just the mission. Nothing human left." "Then don't be White Frost," Hale said. "Be Alara Wynn, who happens to be the best cold-weather sniper alive. Be the woman who reads wind like poetry and treats weapons like they're worthy of respect. Be someone who saves lives because she understands exactly how precious they are." The door opened. Davis entered, followed by Lieutenant Cortez. The SEAL officer was bandaged and limping, but his eyes were clear and grateful. "Sergeant Wynn," he said, "I wanted to thank you. We were out of options. You gave us a chance." Alara stood, uncomfortable with the attention. "You held your position. That's what gave me time to shoot. We held because you took out their command. That shot 4,000 meters in a storm, it was impossible." "It was necessary," Alara corrected. "That's different from impossible." Cortez smiled slightly. "Fair enough, but still thank you. My team is alive because of you." After he left, Alara turned back to Hale. "If I do this, if I step back into this role, I need conditions." "Name them." "I'm not going back to being a ghost. No more sealed files. No more hiding who I am. If people know I'm a sniper, they should know why I stopped and why I started again." "Agreed. And I need help. Real help. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes to make sure I don't lose myself in this." "Already arranged. Team arrives tomorrow. And no more solo operations. I work with a spotter, with a team. What happened to my old team? I won't risk that again." Davis has already volunteered. Alara glanced at the older SEAL, who shrugged. "Someone needs to keep you from freezing your hands off. Might as well be me." For the first time in 2 years, Alara smiled. It was small, tentative, like a flower pushing through snow, but it was real. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it. But on one condition. I'm still the armorer. Every weapon on this base goes through me. Because if I'm going to ask people to trust their lives to their equipment, I need to know that equipment is perfect." "Deal." Hale extended his hand. "Welcome back, White Frost." She shook his hand, her grip firm despite her small size. "Alara. Just Alara." The base quickly adapted to the new reality. Within days, everyone knew that the quiet armorer was actually a legendary sniper. Some people treated her differently, with awe, with fear, with respect, but most just treated her like Alara, because that's who she'd chosen to be. She set up a training program, teaching other snipers how to read weather, how to calculate for extreme distances, how to maintain mental clarity under pressure. Davis assisted, and together they created something neither had expected, a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. The nightmares didn't go away. Alara still woke sometimes in the dark, seeing the faces of her lost team, but now, instead of hiding from those memories, she talked about them with the counselor, let herself feel the grief without drowning in it. And slowly, carefully, she began to understand what Hale had meant. The 5 people she'd lost weren't weights pulling her down. They were reasons to be better, to do better, to make sure their sacrifice meant something. 6 weeks after that night on Ridge Point, a new mission came down. Another team in trouble, another impossible shot needed. Alara and Davis geared up without hesitation. "You ready?" Davis asked as they prepared to move out. Alara checked her rifle, her hands steady and sure. "I'm ready." They moved into the mountains, into the cold and wind and danger. But this time, Alara wasn't running from who she was. She wasn't hiding behind a false name or a safe job. She was White Frost. She was Alara Wynn. She was a sniper, an armorer, a teacher, a survivor, a human being carrying her dead with grace and her living with purpose. And in the endless white of winter, that was enough. The mountains watched, as they always did, and the legend walked among them, no longer a ghost, but a woman who'd learned that the hardest shot isn't the one you take at 4,000 meters. It's the one you take at yourself, when you decide to live again. 3 months later, Alara stood in the armory, training a young sniper named Rebecca Chen on proper rifle maintenance. The spring thaw had begun, and patches of brown earth showed through the retreating snow. "The weapon is your partner," Alara explained, guiding Rebecca's hands along the bolt assembly. "You take care of it. It takes care of you. Never forget that." "Yes, Sergeant." Through the window, Alara could see the mountains no longer white, but starting to show green at the lower elevations. Life returning after the long winter, her radio crackled. "Alara, this is Davis. Got coffee and those protein bars you like. Training room in 5? She smiled. "Copy that. On my way." As she walked across the base, soldiers nodded to her in greeting, not with fear or awe, but with the simple respect given to someone who'd proven themselves when it mattered most. In the operations center, Hale was reviewing reports when she passed. He looked up and caught her eye. She nodded. He nodded back. An understanding that needed no words. Spring was coming. The storms would return, eventually they always did. But for now, there was sun and warmth and the promise that